What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers! And, that's about it.
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance!
Shoot! What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers!
Shoot! What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers! And, that's about it.
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Shoot! What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers! And, that's about it.
What was used to kill Hifumi?
Shoot!
What was used to kill Hifumi?
Shoot! Is this really the end for all of us? I refuse to give up yet!
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers!
No, that's wrong! The murder weapon wasn't a Justice Hammer at all. No, it was something completely different.
But, seriously? A different weapon?
Specifically, a hammer from the repository. The killer could have easily used that to kill Hifumi. Now, all the hammers in the repository were covered in flecks of grit and debris. But for some reason, one of them had been scrubbed clean.
Huh?
And the reason it had been scrubbed clean was most likely because it was used to commit murder. If the hammer got covered in Hifumi's blood, of course they'd have to clean it off. I'd also like to point out that the repository has all kinds of hammers. Big ones, small ones, and even some flat mallet-like ones. I think whoever made the Justice Hammers used those as a basis for their design.
If that's true, that would explain the Monokuma Files note about the wounds being similar.
So Hifumi moved Taka's body to the repository, where someone then used a hammer to kill him.
And whoever did that is the true killer. The one Hifumi was working with. And the one who betrayed him. Hold on a moment. I still think it's strange to assume someone was working together with him. The way the graduation rule works, there is no benefit to helping someone else carry out a murder. So the idea that anyone would work together like that is simply ludicrous. We talked about this, did we not? Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
Shoot!
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Shoot!
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Shoot! Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is...
No, it's wrong! Since there were two murders, it's at least plausible that more than one person was involved.
What do you mean?
If there'd only been one murder, then yes, the idea of an accomplice isn't really worth considering. Naturally, if only one person can be saved per murder, an accomplice has no risk versus reward benefit.
Risk versus reward benefit?
The payoff for working together. The reward that balances out the risk of taking part in a scheme. There's no point in being someone's accomplice if there's no benefit to you. However, if there were some potential mutual reward for the risk, then cooperation becomes possible.
You're saying that two people could act as each other's accomplices to commit two separate murders.
I think that's what the true killer told Hifumi. They would each have an accomplice for their crime. And based on the case's events, Hifumi would have been the first one to act, murdering Taka. They made him carry out the first murder so he couldn't back out of helping them later on.
So in this case, there wasn't one single person committing multiple murders. Instead, each person killed someone, creating two separate incidents. And it only looked like one person because that's how the true killer designed it to look. A single suspicious individual, a similar weapon used in each crime, disappearing bodies. By creating one seamless set of circumstances, they made it look like one person was behind it all.
The mastermind picked their target and managed to convince him to go along with their plan. And then, to avoid the no accomplices rule, they simply killed their accomplice. Which, if true, means that betraying Hifumi was part of the plan from the very beginning.
That's just awful! How could anyone be so cruel?
You think so? I can't help but admire its cunning. Still, their choice of accomplice seems odd.
how an accomplice could be involved. But then, who was the one pulling Hifumi's strings?
That's problem numero uno right now!
Here's my answer. It was Celeste.
So I'm the suspicious individual now, am I? I really do hate this kind of joke.
A joke? I wonder.
So what you are saying, then, is that I specifically chose to work together with Hifumi. The idea that I would choose to spend any amount of time interacting with him, that I would go within 10 feet of that shit-brains, that lazy, worthless goddamn idiot! Pardonnez-moi.
Just to be clear, there is evidence to support it.
Is that so?
It is. Throughout the investigation, there was certain behavior that was common only to the two of you. Considering what we've learned so far, it only further proves that the two of you were working together.
I got it! The behavior they had in common has to do with the suspicious individual in the suit, doesn't it? The only ones who ever actually saw Robo Justice firsthand were Celeste and Hifumi.
Shush, the adults are talking now.
Sorry.
As he said, only Celeste and Hifumi ever laid eyes on the costumed individual. If we accept that Hifumi was one of the culprits, we can't help but suspect what Celeste has said as well.
Are you saying everything they told us was a lie?
After taking Hifumi to the nurse's office, we all began our search for this individual, correct? And not too long after that, do you remember what Celeste said? We headed to the second floor specifically because of what she claimed to have seen. Next, to draw us all to the physics lab up on the third floor,
She let out a blood-curdling scream.
and when we'd all come to see what was wrong, what was it she said? Once she'd done her job of getting us all up to the physics lab, it was time for her partner to get to work.
was to get us to divide into two groups, so that we would discover both bodies at the same time?
In fact, Celeste was precisely the one who proposed that we split up. Well, if Celeste and Hifumi were working together, all those chance events suddenly become connected. And on top of that, that piercing cry of yours early on. That was to signal Hifumi, wasn't it? It was your way of telling him, we're on the 3rd floor, everything's going according to plan. Why else would you let out a scream that could have carried across the sea?
I just realized another strange thing. When we found Hifumi in the nurse's office, who we now know was only pretending to be dead, Celeste, you were the first one to say he'd been murdered. You wanted to make sure we wouldn't have any doubt in our minds.
I don't believe it! Everything, the whole thing was one big act!
Hina, you were with Celeste when Hifumi's body disappeared, right?
Yeah. I was feeling kinda sick, so Celeste took me to the bathroom. Wait! Then that was...
She wasn't worried about you. She just saw a chance to help Hifumi sneak out of the nurse's office.
Each piece isn't much by itself, but start putting them together and the picture gets very ugly indeed. Wouldn't you agree, Celeste?
Danganronpa.